Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss how Conservative MPs are once again taking issue with the way Boris Johnson is running what is supposed to be their government. This time it's in the wake of the rather foolish, self-defeating certainly, and definitely petulant act of withdrawing the whip from Julian Lewis, who is the Tory MP, or rather the former Tory MP who tricked Boris Johnson last week and has now been able to ensure that the report into Russian interference in British political life will be published this week. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, at the moment, you would think there are mounting reasons for Conservative backbench MPs to be fairly unhappy with their so-called leader, because he's getting duffed up weekly in Prime Minister's questions by Keir Starmer. Summer will give him some respite from that. So it's the last PMQs this week before the summer recess, which shouldn't be happening at all in the middle of an emergency, but there it is. But it'll be back on in September. So it'll be 6 weeks of respite for him only. He's made a complete arse of the coronavirus pandemic. Now, although his management of the disinformation and keeping a lid on things is working at the moment, there's still a sizable proportion of the population, the voting public, who think the government's done all right and yeah, it's terrible, but they've done the best they can. But, the focus for any MP who wishes to remain an MP is always going to be the next general election. And normally the fact that the general election is still years away would be a good thing and you wouldn't worry about wobbles like this. But in this regard, it's not that great because there's plenty of time for the fallout of COVID mismanagement to come out, particularly when the inquiry happens. Now, this isn't, the case of, say, causing some economic damage, for example, and then hoping to recover from it, because that's what they usually do. Make a balls up of something, oh, we've got a few years, we'll recover from it, people will have forgotten. The mismanagement has killed the loved ones of lots of voters, and those loved ones will still be dead by the time of the next general election and will still be missed. He's also kept Dominic Cummings in post, which they were never really happy about from the start, and especially so given the blow to public confidence that the government took in keeping him after his little Durham antics. They've also had to defend quite appallingly unpopular policies. So the government have made decisions and they've made their MPs back them up in their local constituencies. And then that leadership has then U-turned on a great many of them, which makes those loyal party MPs look like monkeys in front of their local constituencies, defending a policy that the government then goes back on. So frankly, I personally feel that the only reason his own MPs haven't taken him properly to task so far is that quite a lot of them are really inexperienced. So of the 365 Conservative MPs, it's 364 now, 107 are brand new. They're still finding their feet in the rough and tumble of politics in Westminster. Many of them had no idea how Parliament even worked. It's like they'd never even watched BBC Parliament to see proceedings going on. Their election was a complete surprise to quite a lot of them as well. They were standing in seats that, Conservatives just do not win, but then did. Now, these are not exactly the sort of MPs who are going to cause trouble for the leadership. They're delighted to be where they are and probably have the words of a Guys and Dolls song bouncing around in their heads saying, "Sit down, you're rocking the boat." But Johnson isn't just dividing British politics, but Conservative politics as well. He avoids contact with backbenchers as often as possible. He's taken moves to reduce the role of the Parliament in Westminster in political life. That's included having plans to have Parliament sit even less often than it already does, reducing the number of MPs. He's already removed briefings from Westminster to Downing Street, which means that he gets to control which journalists get to ask him questions. And he's also using emergency powers to take Parliament completely out of COVID decision making as well. And the withdrawal of the whip from Julian Lewis effectively stopping him being a Conservative MP. He's still a member of the Conservative Party and he's still the MP. But he's no longer a Conservative MP over his coup with the Russian report last week, which I still find hilarious. I just started giggling about it like a schoolgirl last night thinking about it. But anyway, it is what it is. That has also upset a lot of Tory MPs. You know, I did hear last week when it happened some off-the-record comments via correspondence. But there's now a report in the Guardian I was reading about they're reporting quite a number of MPs that have spoken to them as well, who are saying they've spoken to Sir Graham Brady about the issue. Now, Brady is the chair of the 1922 committee, which is what the Conservatives call their Parliamentary Conservative Party. It's basically backbench MPs, Tory MPs. And they are particularly unhappy, apparently, about the domineering attitude of Boris Johnson. Now, in fact, the report is also saying there are quite a lot of these MPs annoyed by Johnson's inner circle being intolerant of any form of dissent. Because how things normally happen with a leader, even a prime minister, a leader of the party, they have to take account of the feeling of the backbench, which is why they have this so-called 1922 committee, so that the prime minister regularly meets with the chair of this committee to gauge the view of the backbench. But he tries to avoid these meetings because he's not interested. Quite a few of them lay this attitude at the door of Dominic Cummings, because I know that, as I say, some of these correspondents were suggesting that MPs were telling them that this decision to withdraw the whip from Julian Lewis was Dominic Cummings's. But that could be just that they just want to pin everything on Dominic Cummings. They want him gone. They don't necessarily want Johnson gone, at least not yet, but they do want Cummings gone. But we can see this attitude from Boris Johnson himself at every Prime Minister's questions, because every single week Keir Starmer is calmly calling Johnson out for his latest epic failures, and they come on a weekly basis. It's quite easy. And Johnson rants and rages and he gets really upset. And it's becoming a bit of a theme now that he keeps moaning at Keir Starmer for not backing the government. It's like, do you not understand the purpose of opposition there? He hates people telling him he's wrong. He likes to create this attitude that he's marvellous. It's a bit like Donald Trump, but Donald Trump can surround himself with people who will tell him how brilliant he is. Boris Johnson is limited in that because he has to face opposition of some kind. And it's why he moved those press briefings from Westminster, where, as I say, he has no control over the correspondents that will get to ask questions, to Downing Street, where he has full control. But what he has no control over is the leader of the opposition will still get to ask him questions when Parliament is sitting. So by all accounts, representations have been made by these backbench Tory MPs to the Chief Whip to reconsider the action against Lewis. Now, although the Chief Whip withdrew the whip, it won't be his decision. It was Boris Johnson's decision. But obviously you go to the Chief Whip first. And it has to be said that these examples of dissatisfaction amongst backbenchers seem to be happening on a fairly regular basis. Again, I keep coming back to the fact that were it not for the fact that about a third of their number were new and completely unaccustomed to Westminster intrigue and probably wanting to stay well out of it until they found the fee, things may come to a head earlier. Again, every time one of these things happen, you just think, well, things are going to come to a head a bit earlier now, aren't they? The pandemic potentially delayed things as well. It's not just that there's so many of these MPs are new, because when Parliament weren't really sitting doing everything remotely, MPs were saying themselves that they weren't getting these little discussions going on. They weren't in close enough contact to do that, to have these little cloak and dagger discussions about the leadership. But now when, although they're still spaced out in the debating chamber, MPs still are having to go there largely to vote unless they're shielding, which I think worked against it because now those conversations are happening. And I don't think those MPs are really that concerned about Johnson being autocratic in general terms, but they're not happy about him treating them with the same level of contempt that he's shown to opposition MPs, which they're quite happy about, or even the general public, which they don't care about. But he is nothing if not consistent. And every time he pronounces as if he were the king and he's just telling his backbench MPs what the situation is. This is the situation. This is my proclamation. You go and spread it to the masses. When it's something that they don't like, it's going to chip away at their loyalty. And you can almost imagine a scenario where what Boris Johnson wants, of course, is Parliament to be completely packed out again, so he can have his braying, cheering MPs behind him, and every time he says a thing, they cheer and try and make it look to a casual observer that Boris Johnson is winning. So he'll get his 360 odd MPs behind him to cheer his every bit of verbal diarrhea, only to be met with like a muted response or even complete silence as they are writing their letters to Brady calling for a vote of no confidence, which I still don't think will be imminent just yet, and I do think Summer's going to give him a bit of breathing space. But I do wonder if some haven't already sent those letters in, because what happens is, for there to be a vote of no confidence, it's not just a one-off event. Conservative MPs write a letter calling for one to Sir Graham Brady. Once he has a certain number, then that triggers the vote and he announces it. Until then, he's not supposed to say how many letters there have been or anything like that. We saw the process with Theresa May, of course. So it can take place over some time. Obviously, Conservative MPs can withdraw their letter if they change their mind. But I do, so I wonder if some MPs haven't already done that. And that each time he pulls a stunt like this, maybe a few more do as well. And it is actually just fundamentally so stupid. Because I would have thought even a dullard like Johnson understands the adage, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. Because Boris Johnson really has supreme executive power to do whatever he likes. He got carte blanche to do whatever he likes. He's changing the very constitution of the country. But there is one group of people that can actually stop him, that actually has power over him, and that is Conservative MPs. So why he feels he can not only ignore them, but actively piss them off is completely baffling to me. They are the one group of people he needs to keep sweet. And if he does that, he has got that power to do what he wants. If he kept them on side, carte blanche, do whatever he likes. But as it is, people, were remarking last month about how Boris Johnson's first year as Prime Minister has gone. As things stand, they're not going to be doing that for a second anniversary because there's not going to be one. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you find the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.